right, welcome to another edition of the Georgia Track and Field and Cross Country Coaching Collective podcast. Andy Christie from Mill Creek here, along with Chris Mayer from Athens Academy. And as always, you can find us on our website, georgiatfxccollective.com, and on social media. Today, we're giving you another kind of bite-sized episode, this time about the start of cross country, like organization-wise, what you can do in August as you're getting things going. And even if you're a veteran coach, maybe you'll take a thing here and there based on how Coach Mayer and I have done things in the past. So the big thing that sticks out to me with this is a parent meeting. And I always try to make sure the parents in the program are well informed ahead of time with what's going on. With some emails, of course, but having parents in front of you and being able to meet with any that have questions individually is just a huge bonus. So the first thing I'll say is some of this is informed by how much information a coach might have given runners and parents already. When they had their sign up meetings in April or May, how much information was given. But even if a lot of information was already given, it of course is good to emphasize it again, to reiterate the main points. And what I always say with some of the things is it's tentative. Like, for example, the schedule, that I gave in April or May, I always say it's tentative because sometimes over the summer, find out more information that maybe makes me decide to go to a different meet than originally planned. And that way in August, I can go ahead and tell the parents, here's the definitive schedule, here's what we're doing. I also think another thing that comes to mind in the parent meeting is being very upfront with the team norms and the team rules, whatever those might be for a program. And I always have parents and runners sign off on a parent and athlete kind of behavior contract or just signing off saying, I've read the team handbook, I know what's expected. But emphasizing that in August can really help out a coach later in the season as certain things may arise. So that just a reminder of, hey, here's our policies, here's what you signed off on. If you have questions, let me know up front so that we can address those before there's an issue, and hopefully there's not an issue at all. Those are a couple of things that come up for me with parent meetings. What about you, Coach Mayer? Anything in particular?
Yeah, I think as much information as you can share, in May, I think is great. I think having that initial distribution list to all the people who've signed up, having some sort of idea of your schedule ahead of time, of course. But yeah, here we are. We're in July, and we're talking about that meeting in August, right? So I've always enjoyed having the face-to-face, like, everybody still come and show up, and I try to have people in and out in 40 minutes or whatever. And but I would say the last few years, actually, I conducted a few virtual, kind of this way, through a Zoom or through a Google Meet, and turnout was better. So almost double, I would say, actually, people tuning in this way, just because whatever, life's crazy, and having a 6 o'clock or 6:30 p.m. Parent meeting, in August, maybe it's just easier to offer that virtual option. Maybe you can do a hybrid option. I don't know. Maybe you can hold the meeting in person, and not to take us back to 2020 too hard, but yeah, offer a stream of the meeting as well. Just to think outside the box there. And yeah, I'm a slideshow person. I think most people probably are in those meetings, those situations. I think knowing what are your big highlight slides and the order that you present those, I think, is really important. We would always try to kick off the meeting with an athletic trainer presentation. actually, let them kind of take the stage first, or if they couldn't be there in person, ask them to provide a slide for us with contact information and general protocols and things like that. Um, After that, I think, like you said, team norms. I'd like to hit, like, the next thing I would talk about in a parent meeting is practice times, practice locations. What does the normal day to day look like? What does your, athlete need to, be successful, or at least have a positive experience? Go get good running shoes from a running store, somebody who knows what they're talking about. Appropriate clothing, having a permanent water bottle, things like that. We were lucky that at my previous school, we actually had a athletic department contract, so I didn't have to worry about, if you were going to be a member of any team at our school, you had to sign the same generic contract, which pretty much covered all the bases. There were a few years where, I had considered having an additional type of contract, that I ended up just kind of shying away from, um, because I don't know, I was discouraged from it in some ways, and I could see why. We wouldn't want to go that right route and have something that was specific to our sport, or even certain athletes that maybe have had some poor experiences with in the past that come back and are on the team, and those kind of things happen, right? Um, let's see, what else. I think the schedule, save that for your last slide. I think that's kind of like, that's the big money item. That's what all your parents are going to be pulling their phones out and taking a picture of, or a screenshot or whatever, and then you've lost them. I mean, all they want is the schedule. So make sure that you've talked about the things that are important to you, in terms of, like I said, I think athletic training, making sure that people are going through your trainers if you've got that at your school. That was huge for us. Um, Practice policy, times, locations, behavior policies. We had like a 3 strike type of rule, that I always made sure that I presented. We had an attendance policy rule that I made sure that I covered. We had a lettering policy type of rule that I also made sure that I covered. Nothing's worse than, getting to the day after the banquet and getting hit with an email of, well, so and so lettered and my kid didn't, and I don't understand why. You want to make sure that you're clear on some of those things. Um, yeah, I mean, make sure you don't want to bore them. I think you want to make sure that your parent meeting is 30, 40 minutes if you can handle that. You're only going to have them for so long, and then think about the presentation pretty strategically in terms of what information is important to you and how you want to present it, and schedule last. Once you show that schedule, you've lost them.
No, I love those points of figure out what is the most important info that you want to share, and what info you can just tell them, like, hey, this is on the website, and they could check on their own time. Because I think in the past, sometimes I've gotten bogged down on wanting to tell them everything. And more recently, I've started realizing that, hey, they can spend some of their own time looking at certain things, and I don't have to go over every little detail.
I'll
Uh,
sorry, I'll add one more thing.
yeah,
Having your team parents, if you've I hope you've already got them, by this point you get to the parent meeting, you've got your team parents already selected, giving them a few minutes to have the floor, and making sure that they're people that, can field a lot of the stuff that maybe you don't want to deal with. You don't want to be hit with God knows how many emails, a day or a week, with stuff that just doesn't need to be answered. Um, we had a parent group me, so, that I was very intentionally not a part of. So any and all questions could kind of go through that parent group me, and whatever, your veteran parents can kind of take the lead there, or your team parents that are hopefully in charge of that group me. That's just a really easy way to take a little bit of that extra attention and stress off of you that maybe isn't totally necessary.
yeah, I think there's different situations that coaches might have. Maybe if you're fortunate enough, maybe you have some parents that, when he says team parents, we're talking about like booster club officers, or parents that are just helping to organize certain things. And if you do have that, then yes, while I agree, while you have the parents in front of you, whether it's giving them a chance to speak at the meeting or before and after the meeting, they have some tables set up. Hey, go see that parent about spiritware, or snacks for meet day, or whatever it is, the different things that a coach wants to be taken care of during the season. That's the time to do it when you have parents in front of you, because it's going to be a lot easier to get volunteer positions filled that way versus an email that might just be fall through the cracks. But if you're a coach that is in a situation where maybe you don't have a lot of parent involvement, it could be as simple as just setting out sign up things yourself, sign up sheets. Um, if you're kind of all questions go to you as the head coach, where you are at. Maybe it's setting up a list of frequently asked questions that goes on your team website, or posted around the room where you're having the meeting. Anything at all that can help a coach not get bogged down with those details, because it's one thing if one or two parents are asking them, but if 10 to 15 are asking the same question, then it's taken away from the coach being able to talk to that new parent, make them feel at ease, or um, whatever needs to be dealt with in that moment. Um, but yeah, if you have a parent that can, whether it's the parent that sends out the emails, or someone else that can kind of answer some of those questions, particularly from new parents, that is a huge help as you start off the season and get through that parent meeting. Something else that comes to mind for me is, if you have a bunch of assistant coaches, then obviously you come up with a plan for how we're going to organize the workouts. But if you maybe don't have that many assistants, or don't have an assistant at all, if you have a student that you've had in the past that was reliable, trying to get them to be a manager, it's a huge help. To record times, to get, fill up the team water cooler, whatever the case may be. Even if you have assistant coaches, I've found that managers can be super helpful, because then that's going to free up the assistant coaches to do things other than just record times. If you have a large team, then it's going to help you, all coaches, to kind of be hands on with those runners that are experiencing, they twisted their ankle on the warm up, or on the first interval, or maybe they're just those athletes that you need to coach up a little more to get them through the workout. Whatever the case may be, maybe you notice something about their form. It's going to free up the coaching staff to deal with those things as the workouts go on. So that's something else that you can establish early on in August as you're starting the season.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Find some help. There have been years where my cross country coaching staff has been 4 or 5 coaches strong, um, which was awesome, amazing. And then there were years where it was me and one other person. And for us, that was a team that was hovering 80 kids. And that's not a great ratio. So those were years where we totally identified, maybe there's a kid that, unfortunately suffered an early season injury that's going to take him out for weeks, if not the whole season. Or maybe there's that JV kid who, they're out there for the experience. They want to be there for their friends, and but maybe this just isn't their thing, but they want to be around it all. Maybe they're going to be great as a manager type of role. But find help without a doubt, because like Coach Christie, like you mentioned, little things happen where you want to be able to pull a kid aside or talk to him, or like but you've also got the team at large that you've got to be able to focus on. Something that I wasn't great at, and I mentioned this in a previous podcast, just delegating. So I think have a conversation. If you are graced with a lot of help, find out what your other coaches' interests are or strengths are. And there might be some things that you've got to work on with them. If they're not real comfortable reading the workout sheet and giving, what type of paces they should be running and keeping up with a watch or two watches or three watches. Like, okay, well, help them out with that, because that's a reality. Like you're going to be running two or three groups, and you're going to be responsible for those groups. And but maybe they're just really great at connecting with the kids, you know. Every kid needs a person that they feel comfortable with going to and talking to. And not every kid's going to connect with you as the head coach, accept that reality. So find your help, and I think figure out what your other coaches' strengths are and make sure they feel like they're being utilized. Um, because that's going to make them work harder and want to be there and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and something I think I've gotten better at in the later years of my coaching is, like you mentioned, delegating. Part of the delegation I've gotten better at is the captains or the upperclassmen helping the underclassmen, whether it's setting up how we, setting up Strava account, or whatever, Garmin clipboard or whatever people might, I think that's what it's called, whatever program a coach might be using to record mileage, or that the teammate needs to be plugged into. Um, that brings up like the how the team is communicating with the coach. Like, for example, I used to use Remind Me, and then our county kind of changed some of the limits on it. So then we moved to Band, which I have enjoyed using. I used it this track season kind of as a test run for the bigger numbers we'd have in cross country. And um, that is something that all the team members need to be signed up for, but it can bog me down if I'm having to explain how to do that to a bunch of new runners that maybe just joined the team. Well, a captain can do that, or an upperclassman can do that. um, they can help those runners find access to the pace chart that I've already given them access to a couple times. But there's still going to be those kids that need help with that, and maybe the assistant coaches are busy taking care of something else. That's all stuff in August that I think is really helpful to set up immediately. Like, talk to your captains, talk to your upperclassmen. Hey, when you see a new runner struggling with this, I need your help.
Yeah,
Um, because then once you get into the season, hopefully it just becomes like clockwork, and you still going to have those athletes that need some help, but not as many, hopefully. But in August, when you're getting things going, that's so helpful.
absolutely. Kids want those roles and those responsibilities, and they're going to take ownership of that stuff. And again, like a new runner is going to be more comfortable talking to another kid, another person around their age. So something that we would do, yeah, like we would often have to establish seven, if not more different pace groups kind of within the team. You heard me mention about 80 kids. That was kind of where we hovered. And, you know, your top group might only be three or four kids. And then, they kind of grow from there, where your biggest group is maybe 12 to 15. And we tried to identify kind of a leader of each group. Um, because captains, you might want to only have two, keep that small-ish. Maybe you're a team that wants to identify like a JV captain or something like that too. But even if we didn't name them captains, I knew that I had a point person sort of with each group. Um, and something that we did, you mentioned the Garmin stuff. Buying now again, this is not something that every team is going to be able to do, but I had planned for this for a long time. But I bought a Garmin for every group because we had a Strava, and we were able to buy 8 Garmins, and rotating the leader for each group so that we could have a way of tracking, kind of keeping an eye on what's going on with each group. Um, anyway, getting a little bit off topic there, but I think student leadership is huge. I think the kids are going to own those roles, and the kids are going to be more comfortable talking to each other, if rather than maybe approaching the head coach of, yeah, I don't know how to join Strava. I don't know how to read the pace chart, and you don't have the time maybe to go over that with 20 or 25 kids. And something that I always wanted more time for, in August was, if we have that rain out day or a cancellation for the heat or whatever, being able to have a classroom day for the new members, try to talk through some of that stuff. And again, something that I was a great idea that I never maybe executed on.
Other things that come up for me, I know with my staff, we go ahead and in August establish a who's staying late on what day in terms of, staying until that last kid is picked up by their parents. We rotate. There's three of us, so we just rotate days. And as the head coach, I take the extra, whatever days are not picked up, I take. But it's nice to have a rotation. Um, Figuring out how you're going to communicate where you're practicing. If you're a team that practices in multiple locations, depending on the day, um, whether it's that band app, or for me, I do band, but also you really use our website a lot. Like every Friday, I publish what the next week's practice locations are, and that's mostly for the parents that are carpooling, so they know and can plan well in advance. Um, where and that cuts down on the where are we practicing question. Um, but just those organizational things that might pop up in
Absolutely.
August.
Yeah. And I think tying back to like the parent meeting, like making sure that you communicate like, hey, like there's going to be a weekly Sunday evening or maybe, Monday before lunch email that gets, pushed out. And that's going to be about like just items for the week, like practice locations, what they can expect pickup times and things like that. Maybe even, if you're a coach that likes to do this, a recap of the previous weekend race, some highlights, nice to share if you've identified the runners of the week or something like that. And then coming back and saying like, all right, there's going to be a Thursday morning before lunch that are all, it's going to be like bare bones bullet points about what you need to know for Saturday. Um, and again, establishing the expectation of like that communication is going to come at those times. So kind of minimizing people reaching out with questions and just they can count on, all right, well, Thursday at 12:01, I should have everything I need to know about Saturday's meet, in my inbox. Um, and again, I think not to, I think the parent remind or not remind, but group me was huge. I think likewise, you could have a team group me. You probably want to be on that one as a coach. I was not on the parent one again for good reason. I wanted to stay out of that one. But for the athlete one, maybe be in there as the coach so you can kind of monitor what's going on, what's being said, but also kind of leave that one out there for the kids. You never know. One of the biggest things for me was when a kid was late for the bus. You're sitting there waiting at 5 whatever in the morning, and hey, can somebody text or call or get a hold of them? And you know, um, so I think having that team communication in one spot could be helpful.
Absolutely. As we wrap this up, the last few things that I think of in terms of starting cross country and the first weeks of August, um, I think about the things that I want to go ahead and mark off my to-do list early in the season. So for me, that means picture day, if possible. I've already scheduled that usually in May, but that it's not too late if coaches haven't done that now. Just whatever process you have to do with your yearbook staff or whoever takes your pictures, but knocking that out in August so it's done um, is something that I definitely want to do. Something I borrowed from Coach Mike Demarest, a longtime Parkview coach, who just stepped down, but he did his kind of summer incentive meet in August, where the big overnight trip and go somewhere afterwards, an amusement park or theme park, somewhere like that. Um, I do that now because for us it works out well because we were doing it later in the season, closer to Coach Wood, which I host, and that was just too much late season. And so now doing it in August really helps us because it motivates them for the time trial because we base who goes to that Florida race off of the time trial, and then yeah, we go ahead and knock out our Universal or Disney or whatever trip we're doing by the end of August, and then that and it's a fun trip, but it's nice to have it done earlier in the season rather than later. Um, and just those things that coaches might find that they feel better at taking place the first month of the season, like a fundraiser. That's the last thing I wanted to mention. A fundraiser, usually not the most fun part of a coach's to-do list. But if you can knock it out early, obviously that's going to help you to know how many extra things you can do during the season, what the banquet might look like if it's dependent on those funds. Um, and just going ahead and taking care of that as soon as possible. But it might be that your team's fundraiser has to happen and later on in the season, like our Coach Wood Invitational, which is a fundraiser for us. Just depends on how you go about doing that fundraiser, what it is, and how stressful it is to implement it as in terms of if a coach wants to knock it out in August or if it can wait a little bit. But I know you have a little different perspective with fundraisers, Coach Mayer.
Yeah. So again, to kind of think outside the box, like I've mentioned in previous podcasts, again, that my last couple of schools, we've sort of had a fixed budget, and that's what we're working with. Now, what I could say is you can maybe get creative and be able to pad your budget a little bit. Currently, at Athens Academy, we're doing some summer all-encompass track meets, just community track meets, which is fun, getting people involved, getting people on our campus. They're having a great time with it, doing some kids races and things like that. And it's not a huge dollar amount, right? Can sell t-shirts. Like, again, how awesome is it that Graham Blanks, by the way, going to the going to the Olympics? But we're selling some t-shirts that are in support of him and that journey. And I believe some of those profits are gonna help the cross country and track programs. But there's a 5K every year, so no one item is going to be something that's going to fund. Speaking about those, sort of those big trips, I think every team try to find that big trip that's going to motivate your team. For sure. I think that's a huge item. And it's a costly item. So previous school, we went to Great American a couple of times, and it's a really expensive trip. And we only took the top, 20 boys and girls. But being able to pad the budget to afford those things. And we sold team gear. Everybody was going to get a team t-shirt. And I'm not talking about price gouging people, but maybe we got the t-shirts for $22 a pop from Nike. Once we got them printed and everything, maybe we sold them for $27 or $28, and we're making $2 or $3 per t-shirt. If you've got 70, 80 people, if you offer them to parents, again, those little dollar amounts, they help. So in the end, we've had the budget, maybe an extra $300 or $400 right there. So I think find those places. If you can't do a run-a-thon or you don't want to sell all the Cokes or whatever everybody's having to do these days as fundraisers. I know, Coach, it was really tough back in the day, going door to door, knocking and saying, "Hey, I'm going to run this many laps at our lapathon or whatever." And some people are maybe still holding on to those days, but I don't know that most are. So finding a way to, if you can get creative with how to help pad your budget a little bit and do those extra things, awards at the banquet, like you mentioned, maybe team gear for the state meet. You want to do a special t-shirt or hoodie or something, and a little extra reward for those kids that have earned that opportunity. Finding a way to do that is going to elevate your program.
And knocking it out in August lets you plan
Oh,
well
yeah,
in
totally.
advance.
Yeah. Have a plan.
Plan accordingly. Well, hopefully, people watching this will get one or two things that might help, or this might just reinforce that what you're already doing. So again, thank you for tuning in. I hope you check out the website and our social media accounts, and let us know if there's anything else we can do as a coaching collective to help. So good luck this season.